Everybody's terribly unfocused. Refocus. How do we change this number into polar form? We need to get him into polar form. So what do? So we think about, okay, -1 root 3. This would be 2. Oh gosh, I recognize this. How big is this?
6.
I don't need no stinking calculator, right? I got this. That's 60. So my angle is -120. So my number is 2 CIS 120. Would everybody agree with that?
Yes.
That is the number that I am going to raise to the 6th power. Now, what does DeMoivre tell me to do? If I'm going to multiply this thing times itself 6 times, it'll be 2 to the 6, and then 120 times 6. So 2 to the 6th. We can do that without a calculator. That's 64. And 120 times 6. 720. Oh, it's too big. So we'll have to shrink it down. So let's see if we just start shrinking it down. Oh goodness. That one's going to go all the way to 0, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, so it can't be 360?
Nope. We're going all the way to 0. That is my polar form answer. Now, kids, wait a minute. Look at that. Think about if you had done it in that form, how long it would take. And how long did this take? Yeah, about 15 seconds. Now, here's the bad news though. Remember how you changed this into polar in order to do it? Well, now we got to change it back to rectangular. But that's easy, because changing it back to rectangular means find x and y. And how do we find x and y? X equals r cosine theta. So x is going to equal 64 cosine 0, and y is going to be 64 sine 0. Now again, no calculator necessary. None. Where's 0? On an axis. What's the cosine?
Oh, it's r over,
No, it's not r over anything. Cosine is x over r. By the way, since we're talking about that, you memorized the cosine was x over r. Multiply both sides by r. Is that really anything new? No, it's what you've done all along. It's just written differently. So what's my cosine? X over r would be 1 over 1. So my cosine is 1. What's my sine? 0. Somebody said it. Good.
Anything multiplied by 0 is 0.
That's
so
right.
Nothing.
So what's my answer? I'm trying to get an answer that's x plus yi. So my x is 64, and my y is
Nothing, so
0.
yeah. So you can either write 64 plus 0i, or you could just write 64. If you FOILed this out 6 times, it would eventually just come out to be 64. But I promise you that if you were FOILing this out, you'd still be working on it. It takes a long time to do that. Wow. That's big stuff. All right, got one more thing to talk about. And then we're going to practice some more of these if we have time. We might run out of time. and I erased my numbers. So let me make up some new ones. Let me say Z sub 5 is 3 CIS 200, and Z sub 6 is 6 CIS 100, and Z sub 7 is 2 CIS 75. Okay? Now we talked about already. This is something new I need to add on to this conversation. We talked about already that Z sub 5 times Z sub 6 would be what? Everybody in the room should be able to do that. We talked about it. These two numbers multiplied together will be what? 18 CIS 300. Okay, easy, easy, easy. But what if I said Z sub 5 divided by Z sub 6? Do you have a thought about that?
3 divided by 6, 100.
So instead of multiplying 3 times 6, maybe I would divide 3 and 6?
It'd be 1.
And then subtract.
And then subtract the angles. That is exactly right. When you divide complex numbers in trigonometric form, you divide the r's, subtract the angles. When you multiply them, you multiply the r's, add the angles. When you divide them, you divide the r's, subtract the angles. So what would Z sub 7 over Z sub 6 be? Now watch it. I said 7 over 6. So what's Z sub 7 over Z sub 6 going to be? 1/3 CIS, because it's 2 over 6, so 1/3.
Negative 25?
Negative 25. But oopsie, oopsie. Remember, we have rules about the argument. It has to be between 0 and 360. So that's correct, but we're going to have to rewrite it. And we will rewrite it as 335. And no one is going to be confused by that. We are simply looking for a positive coterminal angle. And to find coterminal angles, we add or subtract 360, right? That's what we did. Wait. 2 more concepts. 2 more. They're easy. All right. Here we go. Z sub 5, which is right here, but with a bar over the top. The bar over the top is the notation for the conjugate. Now, when a number is written in rectangular form, like 2 plus 3i, you would all tell me, I said, okay, this is Z sub 1 here. You would all tell me that the conjugate of 2 plus 3i would be what? 2 minus 3i. You guys learned that a long time ago, like in another class. That's the conjugate, right? Now, let's look at these graphically. The original is over 2 and up 3, right? Over 2 and up 3. And the conjugate is simply over 2 and down 3. Now, what can you tell me about the R values or the magnitudes of those two numbers? This one went over 2 up 3, this one went over 2 down 3. What can you tell me about those R's? They're going to be the same. So when I say to you, what is the conjugate of this number, the R is going to be the same, right? No change in the R. The original number here had this as its angle. The conjugate has this as its angle. Now what can you tell me about those two angles? Over 2 up 3, over 2 down 3. What can you tell me about the size of those two angles? They're the same, aren't they? Except one's positive and one is negative. So if the original number is 3CIS 200, the conjugate is just going to be 3CIS negative 200? Oops, oops, oops. Can't have a negative. So we'll have to rewrite that as 3CIS 160. How do you find a conjugate in polar form? R stays the same, the angle becomes negative. Instead of going up, you go down. And then fix whatever needs fixing. Okay? One more. Let's use that same number, and let's suppose I had that. Now, we're used to this notation because we used it in vector land. What did that notation mean? Okay, it looks like absolute value, but that's not what it meant. What did it mean? It meant magnitude. It meant if you drew the number or drew the vector, how long would it be? So think about this number right here. What would its magnitude be? 3. Yes. Why? Because isn't R the same as the magnitude? You got it. Yes. R and magnitude are exactly the same thing. So if we want to know the magnitude of Z sub 6, the answer is 6. It's R. The length of the number, and length is used loosely, but the length of the number is its R value. Every time. Okay? All right. Last thing. We didn't ever do that. Last quiz question at the bottom. But you can do it. You can do it. The last quiz question at the bottom. It says 3CIS 50 to the third power. You know this. What's the answer? 27 CIS 150. 27 CIS 150. All right. Did I talk to you about your Latin paper? Have you looked on Schoology? Yeah. We're all good there. All right. We have a quiz next time we're together. Caitlin, who's your next?